The Delta State Police Command, as we know, is a cesspool of corruption. The men and officers of the Delta State Police Command, as of today, are only interested in clamping down and arresting persons they suspect of being yahoo boys. And they extort these young men who complain to us daily. And we've had the need to intervene in such matters. I have situations where they raid hotels and they begin to charge these young men monies to be paid for their liberties. Is that what policing is about in a democracy? For how long will these men in black continue to see the Nigerian people as the enemy or as a means to elevate themselves outside penury? But in all honesty, that situation is not isolated. That is the policing we now have in Nigeria, where the men in black has decided to go back to the dark Obesian age, where they now feel that once you wear that black uniform and you have a gun in your hand, you are more powerful than any other individual in this country. The situation of that young man in that video is worse, or was worse, than that of AG Rafiu Bello versus AG Oyo. And in that case, the man was even on appeal. The trial court convicted him and sentenced him, while the matter was pending at the appellate court. The government of Oyo State hurriedly executed him. And I can remember the words of my lords in the Supreme Court. They came down hard on the Oyo State government for accepting to kill a man whose appeal is still pending and subsisting in court. In this situation, the young man is still presumed innocent under the law. What this means is that, as far as the law is concerned, that man has committed no offense, has done nothing wrong under the law. His right to his life under chapter 4, section 33 was full. And for a policeman who is being paid with taxpayers' money, a trigger-happy policeman who is being paid with taxes being paid by that young man, to not terminate extrajudicially the life of a vibrant young man who has explained the circumstances surrounding his presence at that scene, calls for a serious overhaul of Nigerian policing architecture and system generally. The only thing which has brought this to the fore was that there was a video recording of this situation. But I cannot tell you for free, as an activist and as people who interact with these policemen and their victims on a daily basis, it is not the norm in Nigeria. And unless something drastic is done about this, Nigerians will continue to suffer in the hands of persons who they pay and who are meant to be their servants. Beyond the rhetorics of bringing those officers to Abuja to face police disciplinary actions, more fundamental steps must be taken, which will include an overhaul of the policing strategy in Nigeria. The Delta State Police Command, as we know, is a cesspool of corruption. The men and officers of the Delta State Police Command, as of today, are only interested in clamping down and arresting persons they suspect of being yahoo boys. And they extort these young men who complain to us daily. And we've had the need to intervene in such matters. I have situations where they raid hotels and they begin to charge these young men monies to be paid for their liberties. Is that what policing is about in a democracy? For how long will these men in black continue to see the Nigerian people as the enemy or as a means to elevate themselves outside penury? The government must conscientiously act. The police hierarchy must take very drastic steps to further educate their men and officers in black. The Supreme Court has said in several authorities that the Nigerian police force has lost total touch with modern day realities of policing. And they have now positioned themselves as true enemies of the people. So much so that when you see these men on black, you no longer have any regard for them, because this is the lowest ebb they can ever be. We are calling on the police force, the IGP, and every authority in government today that the officers responsible for this dastardly act must be brought to book immediately. And the Nigerian policemen, particularly those who were part of the old SARS, I think there is a need for them to embark on serious re-engineering of the psyche of this men. They are used to seeing so much blood that they no longer value human life. They see themselves as a killer squad that has the right to just take life without regard to the due process of law. Beyond these rhetorics, the families of that young man must also be adequately compensated. A life has been lost. No amount of money is sufficient to bring back the life of that young man. And we cannot place a monetary value on the life of that young man who was caught in his prime. But his family is entitled to justice. Justice in this case will also be regarded as a three-way traffic. The society on whose land the blood of that young man was shed cried for justice. Justice in this case entails that every officer who was involved in that dastardly act must be brought to book. It is an eye for an eye. It is the sword for the sword. Those policemen must suffer the same fates that that young man has suffered. The families of that young man also cries for justice. Justice for them in this instance requires that there must be a closure for the grief they are currently being subjected to by these happy trigger policemen. And that justice entails that beyond ensuring that these officers who committed that crime face the full wrath of the law, that they are also adequately compensated. The laws of the land, which has been desecrated by these trigger happy policemen, equally cries for justice. Justice in this instance includes and involves a holistic remedy, which includes that these officers have their day in court and they are adequately prosecuted by the police. The police force, whom these men also represent, also demands justice in this case. Justice for the police also includes that the police set example with these bad eggs and every other bad egg in their fold, and ensure that they purge themselves of this bad egg, so that we do not continue to see every policeman as a man that is capable of doing what that terrible police officer has done. Thank you.
Because only if a person is in active combat, for example, if a criminal is opening fire to the police can actually return fire and in defense, okay, to suppress such an an atrocity or a criminal act.